facilitating the access of the new immigrants in Argentina. You know, we are living a very serious situation, poverty, overcrowding, as we mentioned before. And the capacity to be receiving 400,000, 500,000 immigrants every year creates an explosive situation. Therefore, the problem that we have seen under the scope of this scenario is connected with the land use planning, title of this transparency. We have an open door policy for immigration purposes. We are facilitating immigration into the country, individuals that are unskilled labor from bordering countries. We are damaging Argentinian nationals that are very poor on the one hand, and also foreign immigrants that have already settled in Argentina and will see their own standard of living becoming worse because the pie won't be divided into 10, so to speak. It will be divided into 15. So we are aggravating and worsening marginalization, poverty for broad sectors of inhabitants of our Argentinian soul, only because of the fact that we are facilitating their access to our territory freely in a very easy way. So this doesn't mean that we are going to segregate them, or this doesn't mean discrimination altogether. We're not xenophobous. We're protecting even the immigrants that have entered before and that are living in a situation of extreme poverty, difficulties living in shanty towns, squatter settlements, having no jobs, and where their children have no access to education, and they are being brought up in a terrible, awful scenario, which is mainly characterized by drug trafficking and also featured by the fact that they don't have any possibilities to develop in the future in due time and manner. So if we cannot really set a limit to the entry of new immigrants into the Argentinian territory, we have to think about land use planning. Land use planning is a wonderful mechanism which will allow us to try to manage immigration flows better towards different places, sites where immigrants can have really opportunities to grow and, of course, enjoy a better standard of living and quality of life. So land use planning is the space expression of government for any society to develop economically, socially, culturally, and ecologically on a balanced basis for all regions, leading to better quality of life, stewardship in the management of natural resources, protecting the environment, and also making the most of the territory itself. You know that land use planning has been enshrined in the European Charter. It is a scientific discipline, an administrative technique, and a public policy which is conceived as a multidisciplinary approach, a global idea, the balanced development of region and the physical organization of a space according to a guiding concept of principle. I mean, improving the quality of life of the population through their access to the use of utilities and public place structures, and the natural and cultural heritage is of the essence. Now, the Undersecretariat for Land Use Planning of the Argentinian government has conducted a very interesting study. They have designed the Argentinian strategic land use planning approach for the year 2016. This is an integrated scheme, nationally and internationally, strengthening production, retrofit benefit internal connectivity, and also a sort of multi-centered city approach. Now, this model should be supplemented by a specific land use plan, which would be based on guiding principles, what we would say guidelines connected with sewerage systems, drinking water, cleaning the public space, electricity, telecommunications, residential gas provision, collective equipment, integral analysis of the whole population as such, housing problems and physical infrastructure, and communication systems, as well as transportation, means different systems for health, education, culture, leisure, recreation, and sports. And I will close my presentation with a couple of final remarks. I think that we have to join forces and act together in order to really put all the separate parts of these puzzles together, and so that we can really create and design a state policy, a government policy for housing purposes. And this topic should be ranking first in the national agenda. It is absolutely necessary, indispensable, to raise awareness on the fact that there is housing deficit, to mobilize citizen campaigns, to speak about its prospects for growth. Because this is very important, because up until now, the Immigration Bureau is still working as if it were a marketing institution or entity, more and more immigrants into Argentina. It is also indispensable to review this migration policy, and it is also indispensable that shanty towns and quarter settlements keep on growing and growing in number of inhabitants and in number of settlements.
Argentina has a bad inflation problem, at least 12% officially, maybe double that if the index were constructed properly. And I wonder how far this is an obstacle to the growth of the number of new housing units constructed in Argentina each year, that at least equals the number of new families which are being formed each year, because only by matching the number of new family formations to the number of new houses built each year will the housing deficit be reduced. And furthermore, I wonder your reaction to the idea that it's necessary to build not for the very poorest people in society, the people who are currently living in these terrible squatter settlements, who can afford very little out of their own incomes and therefore would require large subsidies for them to be provided with decent accommodation, but rather whether you agree that the main focus should be on decent, well-located housing that conforms to good urban design norms, so that the quality as well as the quantity of the new houses being built improves. So that if you build for those who can afford it, or if you build, if you have a focus which is more on those who can afford decent housing and who can afford to service a mortgage, will you not then both reduce the housing deficit and improve the quality of the housing stock by virtue of the fact that the middle classes will be moving into decent homes, out of their old homes, and the people then moving into their old homes, vacating theirs, all the way down to the very bottom. So those who currently have maybe 5 people squatting in one room may have 2 rooms rather than just the one, and thereby representing an improvement. And whether you think that there is a valid analogy, odd though it may seem at first sight, between the way that the car market works. In Britain, for example, probably here in Argentina also, there are many relatively poor people who are driving cars which they are able to buy on the second-hand car market for, say, $1,000 US. And these cars are perfectly serviceable. They work. They're much better than horses and carts, and they're better than walking. Anyway, the reason why poor people in Britain and in Argentina can afford to drive a car is because they're purchasing a second-hand car. The cars are built for the people who can afford them. They typically will cost $10,000 or $15,000, even for a fairly modest car. But through the process of increasing the stock of cars, faster than the growth of demand for cars, the price of second-hand cars goes right down and can be afforded by the poor. Similarly, if you build decent housing for the middle classes, at least at the rate at which new houses are being formed, so the whole stock, the quality of the stock goes up, and those right at the very bottom are able to afford decent housing in a way they couldn't afford it if the houses were built for them from new. So I'll better leave it at that.
I think you've touched a very, very delicate issue. In my presentation, with a greater degree of detail, I referred to social housing, to housing units built by the state, but I failed to mention the problems faced by middle classes to access affordable housing. At present, only 15 to 20% of the population in Argentina have the financial capability to actually pay for a home. And this is for a very simple reason. It's because there is no lending. There's no personal loans for housing purposes. Lending in Argentina, loans are expensive, and as you very well put it, because of the inflation problem, when you borrow money in the long term, inflation generally impairs capital and ends up causing the installments to be used to pay up a capital which is non-existent, principal rather. When Argentina suffered the crisis you all know of back in 2001, a rule was enacted which forbid all forms of indexing. There's no way that I can enter into a 20-year contract and that the value of installments will be indexed hand in hand with the devaluation or impairment of the currency as it occurs. Also, it is not possible to enter into foreign currency denominated contracts which might maintain the value of installments. At present, union and corporate organizations that engage in the housing area are envisioning different solutions in order to reestablish a lending methodology that will allow returning to the times of long-term and mortgage loans. To this date, I must say that what has enjoyed widest acceptance in those sectors that are committed to this issue and in official sectors is to peg or to tie the installment to the salary, so that if the salary increases, so will the installment in the same proportion. As a result, the principal lent to buy the house won't be impaired. What you say, however, in your question is absolutely true. The fact that the middle classes may not access new housing is acting as a cap for middle classes not to go beyond that threshold. That's the problem. I mean, there is the impossibility of low classes climbing up. Hence, the private sector is at present building some 100,000 housing units which are sold cash or else sold from scratch before actually starting the building through a savings and loan system. But for those who belong to the low-income group in the population, access to housing is only possible
la intervención del Estado
with
con unidades
government
sociales de vivienda. Si
intervention
no es así,
through the provision
no
of
es posible.
social
Lo que pasa es
housing
que
units.
para que haya
For
un ritmo que evite el
these to
crecimiento
engage in
del
a
déficit
pace
estructural,
that will
es
avoid
necesario
further
que el
increasing
Estado por lo
the structural
menos
deficit.
construya entre
The state
150 y
should be
200
required
mil
to build
viviendas por
between
año.
150 and
¿Contesto la pregunta?
200,000 housing units a year. Have I answered your question?
Bien.
Good.
Sí, Darget, enseguida te doy la palabra.
Darget, I'll give you the floor in a minute. I just wanted to
necesitamos que
make a
pregunten.
housekeeping
Yo
comment.
agradezco a Roger
I
la
thank Roger
exposición,
for
pero si
his
no nos vamos a
question.
ir, no vamos a poder completar
But
el programa que tenemos.
we are a little bit
Así que
tight
lo
with the
preferible
agenda,
es que se pregunte
so
concretamente,
try and ask
específicamente,
specifically
la cuestión de que se trata. Tiene la palabra el
about this
contador
topic.
Darget.
Accountant Darget.
El micrófono, por favor. No, al señor. No, tómale, él pidió la palabra antes.
I'm sorry.
Doctor Héctor, lamento no poder
I'm sorry
saciar su
not to be able
voluntad de que sea una
to
pregunta, pero no puedo dejar de pasar dos
meet your
comentarios.
requirement
El
of
primero
making
me
a
parece
question.
que
I'll make two comments
como
rather.
no hay libre
First,
albedrío a la hora de
since there is
nacer,
no free
no
will
elegimos
when we
en
are
dónde
born,
nacer.
we do not choose
Tratar de
where
limitar la
to be
libertad
born.
de que alguien
Trying
vaya a
to
otro
curtail
país
the freedom of people
me
moving
parece
to another
primero
country is
xenófobo
first
y
of
después
all
me parece que va
a
en
sign
contra
of
de nuestra Constitución
xenophobia,
que justamente
and secondly it
permite la
goes
libre
against
entrada de
our
extranjeros.
constitution, which allows for the free inflow of foreigners. So I mean, I don't think this should be the case. Secondly, for those of us who are very knowledgeable and familiar with what we have come here to hear, it's a matter of doing away with the taxes on labor, on investment, on consumption, and applying just the fee on land ownership. In this background, in this scenario, the state will be funding people coming to live here because the larger the fee or the canon, the larger the resources available. So the first one that should be concerned with building houses should be the state, and you should not ask anything from the private sector, which simply would engage in making money and paying others for the work. Thank you.
Mire, la acusación de xenofobia es una acusación muy seria.
The accusation of
En
xenophobia
Europa,
is
la
very serious.
discriminación y la
In Europe,
xenofobia
discrimination and
están siendo
xenophobia
consideradas un delito.
are